Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are doing the mid-year book tag. So, normally it's July, it is July, you wait until July when you have 6 months done. But I'm doing it a little earlier this year just because I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to be posting. And because I'm also want to do some mid-year stats, and so I wanted to actually wait till mid-year for those. And then also, like, I have 2 vlogs planned that are going to be coming out soon, and then also my TBR for next month and my wrap up, and then I have my second quarter book haul, and I was like, when am I going to fit this in? So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it a little early this year, which I usually don't, but we're going to do it a little early this year. I don't really have anything else to say, so let's just get right into this. Question number 1 is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? And lucky for me that I actually keep a list in order of all of the books that I've read this year. As in, like, ranked from favorite to worst. My favorite book so far this year is The Discord of Gods by Jen Lyons, which is the 5th book in the Course of Dragons series. So the series, it follows Kieran, and at the start of the book he is like imprisoned and he is told to tell his life story. And so he starts to tell his story when he got basically sold into slavery, and there's like a whole lot of people intervening and all of this. And then the person who was talking to him says, no, that's not where your story starts. And so they start telling the story from a couple of years before, when he was about, I think, 15 or 16, and he was a thief and who lived in a poorer area of this like city, and he one day breaks into the wrong house and kind of a demon starts following him, and then after this he gets claimed as the lost prince of one of these royal families, and everyone kind of wants a piece of Kieran because he might be destined to destroy the world. And this is the finale, and I loved it. I don't think it's my favorite in the series. I think my favorite might be either book 1 or 3, I think. But I did enjoy this. I enjoyed how everything came together. I thought it was satisfying. There was moments where I was like, I'm not sure, am I afraid of you? And if there was some people that I was like, okay, I don't think Jen Lyons is going to kill you off. And I don't think Jen Lyons is going to kill you off, but might kill you off. And so there was some characters, because some of the side characters I did really care about. So like there was some side characters that I was like, oh my god, please don't. I think it's around the 3rd book we kind of discover something about like all of these prophecies, and I love how that played into this one. I just loved how it all kind of connected together. It was just such a good time, and the thing is, I just really love these characters, so of course I was going to just love this book because it's the final book. Any time with them I love. Question number 2 is the best sequel of the year. So obviously Discord of Gods also fits for this, but I thought to myself, oh, I'll try and choose something next. So I went to my list to be like, okay, what's the next best book which is a sequel? And it's House of Always, which is the 4th book in the series. So I was like, okay, so this question is just Course of Dragons sequels. It's the 4th book in the series. I love this. I also gave it 5 stars. I love this series a lot. I do think this is the weakest. Well, see, I technically gave The Name of All Things 4 stars when I read it last year, but I was in a bit of a slump, and I think we were also like, we were getting introduced to Janelle as a character in that one, whereas I had grown really attached to Kieran and I wanted more of Kieran. But throughout the rest of the books I did end up really loving Janelle, so I feel like I look back on it with pretty positive feelings. So like, I think this might be the weakest because there's a lot of dialogue and it's very repetitive, but again, I just love the character so much that I didn't want to read that much. If we don't want to just constantly be talking about Course of Dragons series, then down a little further is The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carr. This is the 2nd book in the Rook in the Row series, and this is an author duo. This series, it follows Ren as well as a couple of other point of views, and Ren is a con woman, and she and her sister have basically moved back to this place that they grew up in, and she is impersonating a noblewoman to try and claim that she is like a lost cousin to one of these families, but this family might not be as rich as they seem, and there's a lot of dangerous things happening within the nobility as well as in the poorer areas, and Ren is kind of stuck in between everything. And I liked the 1st book, but it was actually a pretty low 4 stars, I would say. But I don't know what it is about this book, it just clicked for me and I just fell in love with it and I could not stop reading. And like, these are very slow-paced books, like, just be aware of that if you want to try them. Like, extremely detailed world building, and just it really slow build up to things happening, but I could not, like, I knew like objectively I was like, yeah, not much is happening, but I just couldn't stop reading because I wanted to get more and more of these characters. And like, I liked them in the 1st book, but I don't know what happened. It was like somewhere maybe like 100 pages in, it just kind of all clicked for me and I ended up really loving it. Obviously, like, The Course of Dragons, they're like the best sequels because I've rated them higher technically than this. This is still 5 stars. But I think if we're talking about like best sequel, because like this was such a like surprise because I give the first one a 4 stars and I gave this a 5, then like best sequel. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, and for this we will go to the bullet journal because I think there's actually only one. Yeah, I don't have really long anticipated release lists. So for the books that are released within the first 6 months, there's only one that I haven't read, and that is Witch King by Martha Wells, and I do definitely still want to read this. I've heard mixed opinions on it, but I think that I will enjoy it because I've heard that a lot of people kind of go into it expecting like epic fantasy and like a huge like adventure, but it's like a lot smaller than that. And I've heard like really good things about the characters, and so I'm hopeful that I'll end up really enjoying it. Then question number 4 is going to be your most anticipated for the second half of the year. I'll give you like 2 seconds to guess. Threads of Power. Fragile Threads of Power. It's got its name now. First in a spin-off series to The Shades of Magic, which is my favourite series of all time. I will leave the video where I talk about my favourite series of all time, which a lot of books that I'm mentioning in this are in that video. I have been waiting for this for years. Because I remember when I read the first one, since back in like 2019? I think it would have been about 2019. I read them, I loved them, and back then it was said that she was writing more. And then it just like with every year, it like kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So I was like starting to think that it would never happen, and it's finally happening. Like from what I've seen, like yes, there's I think 2 new like main point of views, but like the characters from that play like the original series play a big role in this, so I'm so excited. Question number 5 is going to be biggest disappointment, and this one I kind of struggled with. So it's kind of a toss-up between Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare, because like on the one hand I am, but on the other hand like I'm growing out of it. I know I'm growing out of it, so like am I really that disappointed? And then the other one I would say is Hench by Natalie something. I'm so sorry, I can't remember. So Chain of Thorns, I gave it 3 stars. I just don't think she's very good at writing the ends of series anymore, because I think she's done like the big epic thing, because technically City of Glass was the last book, and then she did 3 more, and so then City of Heavenly Fire was again another conclusion, and then Clockwork Princess, and all of those 3, they have really good endings. And I think a lot of the like books by themselves have like interesting endings, and I don't think she can think of any new endings because they are always like it's just so repetitive. And the thing is, I have been growing out of Cassandra Clare for a couple of years now. I would say since Queen of Air and Darkness came out, I've been growing out of it. So I would say, was that 2018 or 2019? I'm not 100% sure, but that was kind of like the time when I was like, oh, I'm not really as into these as I once was. But I keep reading them because they're like so nostalgic for me and all of that, and like also I've dedicated so much time, like you bet your ass I'm gonna finish that damn series. So but even people who are still like die-hard Cassandra Clare fans, a lot of them I've seen are disappointed with how Chain of Thorns ended. The other one that I was saying was Hench. I haven't heard that much about it, but the things that I have heard are really good, and I just did not get it. I did not get it. I did not like it. And it's like one of my least favorite books so far this year. I gave it 2 stars. I went on a whole rant in the video that I read it in. What video did I read it in? And I also wrote an entire review for it, so it was just not for me at all. It was a big disappointment because I was so sure I was gonna love it. So then question number 6 is going to be biggest surprise, and for this I'm going to go with Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. At the time I gave it a 4 stars, but I have since bumped it up to a 5 stars. I just really enjoyed this book. Talking about it, will I have you talking about? Yeah, I'll be talking about this in the next vlog that I post, because I ended up, despite the fact it has nothing to do with Olivia Atwater or Small Miracles or anything like that, I was just like going through my 5 stars and I realized I was like, yeah, Small Miracles needs to be in here. And I kind of just went on this rant, and basically the bottom line is I need to get it in my head that a 5 stars because a book just made me laugh and made me have a really good time is just as valid as a 5 stars because it had epic world building. Like, it's just as valid, okay? Small Miracles follows a fallen angel. They had a bet with their brother, and they lost, and so they now owe a favor. Now the favor is being collected, and basically their job is to mimic this woman called Holly Harker sin, because like her number of sins is like so low. And basically it's like, make her have a bit of fun. I had such a fun time with it. So it was a real surprise. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. Also, I'm getting like the really nice Kickstarter edition. Then leading on from that, question number 7 is your favorite new author. I feel like I need to like keep a list every year of who I have like said is a favorite author, because I think technically last year I did say Jen Lyons was a favorite because at that point I had only read 2 books from her, but now she is definitely a favorite author because I've given like 4 books from her 5 stars. Yes, it's all in one series, but I'm not sure. I think I might have mentioned her last year when I did this tag. I definitely mentioned Martha Wells last year when I did this tag. As I said, leading on from the last one, I would say Olivia Atwater is like getting there. Like technically I've only read 2 of her books. One is a 5 star and one is a 4 stars. But like I think like I wouldn't necessarily class her as like an all-time favorite author, but like a favorite author of like this specific genre of like cozy fantasy. I'm not really a cozy fantasy person, but just the way she writes it seems to really work for me. Because I also read Half Soul, and this follows Dora, who only has half soul because a fairy stole the other half, and so she kind of doesn't feel emotions very strongly, and this can make her like act odd. And then her and her cousin go to London because her cousin is searching for her husband, and then like the court's like magician basically helps Dora out, and there's a romance. It was very sweet and very cute, and I had a really good time with it. And it was a 4 stars. It was still a fairly high 4 stars, but as I said, I did bump Small Miracles up to a 5 star. So, and so like when I want this like particular feeling, I know who to go to. And then the other author who has been bumped into official, like most definitely a favorite author, is Naomi Novik. So I will leave link down below my guide / ranking Naomi Novik, as I have now read every single book that she has written. And while only like one of them is like a true 5 star, every single book that I read from her has been a 4 star. And so it's like, it's very strange to me because obviously like I'm like, oh, but I've only given her 1 5 star, so how can she be a favorite? But she is a favorite because, you know, I trust her to give me a good book. And also it's like, I feel like her books on their own, which I think is maybe why the standalones aren't my favorites, like the books on their own maybe aren't the strongest, but I love the series. So like I like the individual books, but I love the series overall. And so like, yeah, so it's a very strange feeling, but I love them. Newest fictional crush, gonna just skip that. Then question 9 is newest favorite character. I don't necessarily think I have one. Oh, I do. I have one, I think. As a lot of like my favorite books so far this year have been like sequels and stuff. So like none of them are like, oh, this is a new favorite character, because they've already been favorite characters. But I think the one I'm going to go with is Remy from Silver Under Nightfall by Rinch Pecco. This is the last book that I finished, and I gave it 5 stars, and I love Remy. I love him. And so like this book, it follows Remy, and he is basically a vampire hunter. There's a lot of rumors going around that like he's half vampire and all of these things, and so he's very often on the outside. Bad things have happened to him, but he ends up, there's this strange like mutation happening to vampires, and he ends up having to team up with these 2 vampires who are engaged to each other, and to try and figure out what is happening. Let's just say some interesting tension between all of them, and just like their dynamic, them kind of like learning more about him, and there's a lot of things that he is on edge about and he feels guilty about, and I just love him. He was such a sweet character. I think I really enjoyed their dynamic because the 2 vampires, they're like, oh, these people are terrible, let's abandon them. And Remy is like, these people are terrible, but we should still help them anyway. And I just really enjoyed that dynamic. So then question number 10 is a book that made you cry, and every year I struggle with this question, but I actually have an answer. I didn't necessarily cry, but it can. So the answer to that is Sword of Kaigan. I had one like dramatic tear that fell down my face, and that counts. And like I was like misty, you know, but that's nearly as close as I get. The only book that I can think of me like actually sobbing was, I think, Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. And like the thing is, I knew what was going to happen. I knew from like page 1 nearly what was going to happen. When it happened, it wasn't necessarily when the thing that I thought was going to happen happened that I sobbed. It was like the reaction to it and just everything else. Like, it was just so well written. And my whole thing is, this has a super high average rating because, like, I think the conversations in here are done very well, but the conversations are done through this family. And so if you don't connect to the characters, to this family, then you are not going to love it. But I still think you could appreciate the conversations that are in here. But I just don't think it's going to be like a new favorite for you, unlike it is for me. And question number 11 is a book that made you happy. And for this, I'm going to go with Small Miracles. Don't need to talk about it again. But yes, also Half a Soul could also do for this. Like, these are, I think, the 2 books that genuinely made me laugh out loud. Then question 12 is the most beautiful book you have bought or received. So number 1 is going to be The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. And for this, it's mostly because of the sprayed edge, which I don't even think they're doing a matching sprayed edge for the second book, which is really annoying. I like the cover. It's not like a favorite cover. I do like the foiling, but as I said, it's the edges really that do it for me. And then the most beautiful book that I have bought is The Bear and the Nightingale, the Illumicrate edition. We have the weird priest on the back, then we have Vassia on the front. What I really love about it is underneath the dust jacket, it has like the forest, but like the stars and the moon are foiled. So it's like just so pretty. So yes, so that's my favorite. So yes, so that is the most beautiful book that I have bought or received this year. Though I will say, I may or may not have finally managed to snag myself the Illumicrate edition of A Dark Shade of Magic. Question number 13 and the final question is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? And for this, I'm going to just take you over to my TBR shelf because let's be honest, it's kind of all of... Ooh, I don't have anywhere to put this, so ignore my shaky hands. So this is the TBR shelf and also / Uno shelf. Yes, I have 3 different editions of Uno. We have Standard Uno, we have Uno Flip, and we have Giant Uno. This has nothing to do with books, but it's important to me. Technically, I could say all of these. Like, all of these I want to get through before the end of the year. But some are more priority than others. So, obviously, like The Last Argument of Kings, I'm going to be reading this month / start of next month because Catch Up Book Club. I want to read 10,000 Stitches because I want to. The Shadow Glass, I want to read because I want to do ranking all of Brynch Pecco's books. It's Blood, and Ironstone, I'm hoping to read with friends, so they'll keep me accountable. We for the Stars is technically on my TBR this month. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to it, but I do want to get it. Again, I'll be finishing a series if I get to it. Malice, okay, Malice is like one of the only books on here probably that is like not a priority. I do want to read it, but like compared to the others, like I don't, actually no, because Malice I think I bought in like November or December of 2021. So when I get to doing my like revisiting my old book hauls, I'll probably read it for that. But that won't be until like the end of the year. So like hopefully we'll get it read. The 100,000 Kingdoms. That is actually on my 10 books I want to read in 2023, so I should get to it. Jade City, again another one. I mean, I have the whole series. I want to get to book 1 at least this year, and again I'm probably gonna just wait until I get to December so I can do, you know, reading my past book hauls. These weren't a priority until recently, but now I really want to read Kingsbane because Illumicrate announced beautiful editions, and I gave the first one a really high 4 stars if I remember correctly. Like I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time with it, but I haven't continued. And it's been so long since I read it that I've kind of forgotten the first book, so I need to either reread it or I'm hoping that Cassidy will read it and tell me what happens in it. And then yeah, if I read Kingsbane and like give it like either a really high 4 stars or preferably a 5-star, then I'll probably buy the pretty Illumicrate editions. And then The Lies of Alchemora, again another one that's not a priority, but it might be getting read when I do a revisiting old book hauls. Then Promise of Blood, I mean that got DNF'd for the Catch Up Book Club, but I would still like to read it eventually. Then The Kane Chronicles, these are going to be, all 3 of these are going to be read in I think August for my next edition of revisiting my book hauls, because these are the only books that I haven't read from July, August, September of 2021 and 2022. I've read everything else. So it's basically going to be a Kane Chronicle reading vlog coming up in like, I say I'm probably going to do it in August. Then The By Mortar, I probably should try and continue that series, but like I'm not in a rush. Then Bone Shard Daughter, not in a rush because I don't need to start any more series. Theft of Swords, I'm going to leave that for now because Cassie always says that, oh, maybe this will be the next Backlist Book Club pick, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to just leave it for now anyway. Ash of the Sun, I would like to get to that. And then Daughter of No World is going to be read hopefully next week. Oh, also I have Ice Planet Barbarians, which is also probably going to be read next week. And then, oh, the last two books that are technically on my TBR but not over here. Fool's Quest and The Fat Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. We're not going to talk about it. I know I should read them. Am I going to? Nah. I mean, I will. Will I though? So yes, so basically that wasn't at all helpful because basically the bottom line is almost every single book on my TBR I want to get read before the end of the year. I necessarily think that there's any like other books that I can think. Oh, Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. As I say, there's no other books that I can think of that I like really want to read before the end of the year, but I have to read Red Sister for the Backlist Book Club. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!